So as I said last time, I'm going to make a video about studying tips in Japan. Today I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to study in Japan. Tip number 1, before you start looking, ask yourself, why do you want to study in Japan? Do you want to learn the language? Do you want to go to a certain university? Or do you want to join a certain engineering class, science class that is highly recommended? The reason why you have to ask yourself this question is because it will determine your search later on. Now, there are many reasons why someone wants to study abroad, and particularly why someone would want to study here in Japan. One of the reasons might be that you want to learn the language. You want to learn Japanese language. The other can be, for instance, you want to study at a certain university where the engineering or science class is highly recommended, or you just want to go to a certain university. The reason why you have to ask yourself this is because it will have an influence on the second question, which is how you should research. Now, the second step is research, and then maybe do some more research. The easiest way to research is, of course, through Google. Why? Because you really have to know why you're doing it and what you're getting yourself into. You should know which university you want to go to, which part of Japan you want to go to, or if you want to take a certain course, which courses, which universities, etc. that can offer that. Then step number 3. Once you've done all of your research and you've lined up a few universities or courses, you can start by looking and planning all of the deadlines. Deadlines are extremely important in this. If you miss a deadline for the application, you've basically already failed. Cannot stress enough, you do not want to be in a situation where you've got your heart fully set on this university and all of a sudden it seems like the deadline has passed for application, which means you should have to wait another semester or at worst have to wait another full year. I would advise you, the way I did it, I started about 1 year in advance. You need to make sure that you know the application process. The great thing about applying to a Japanese university is that usually the process is very clear. They have very clear steps and which documents you need to submit. Just please make sure you do this on time, because for some universities, especially if you're from a non-native English-speaking country like I am, you need to make sure that you've got your IELTS, your TOEFL, your TOEIC test, whatever. If you're going to go for an MBA, for example, you usually need to have GMAT test scores as well. So make sure that you know what the application system is, what the application documents are, and when they will hold this in your country. Now, this can be a load of documents, I can assure you. For instance, there will be certificates for a visa, for health insurance, for any other kind of insurance, your diplomas. There's a lot of things you need to make sure you have before actually applying, and this can take a long period of time, especially if in your country these type of tests only take place once or twice a year. So make sure that you noted that down in your schedule, that you know which dates the test will be, you know by when you can get certain certificates. Especially when I applied for my universities in Japan, I had a checklist that I could check off once I had the right document, or I would put on by which date I could definitely have that document, so that I didn't have to be worried about not making the deadline. There will also be essays you will need to write. There will be certain letters of recommendation sometimes as well. So just make sure you've got all of those aligned. You've got a checklist ready, and you can just forward the entire stack of documents without worrying about anything. Certain universities also require an interview, especially if you're going for a bachelor degree. So make sure you're prepared for that interview. You can always ask other people. At my Japanese university, APU, Asia Pacific University, there was an entry interview for bachelor students, for undergrad students. I was a master student, so I didn't have that interview, but I did have to write an essay and also have 2 letters of recommendation from 2 of my Belgian professors. Something that's very important is also your visa. Now, depending on which country you're from, this might be a more simple or more complex procedure. I'm from Belgium, so for me it was quite straightforward. Now, once I applied and I got in, I got a letter of eligibility. Now, with this document, it's kind of an invitation from the Japanese university that you will attend university so that you have a legitimate reason to go to the country for long term. Step number 4. Now, once you've applied and you got a successful response, which means you've got into your university of your choice, you can start by packing, which is the most exciting step of the whole process. But before you get to this point, you'll have to go through a pretty grueling administrative procedure, which will also be, for instance, housing, transportation, maybe study a bit of the language basics as well, if you haven't before. Now, if you live, like me, if you live all the way in Belgium and you have to go all the way to Japan, which is quite a long way, make sure you book your ticket in advance, because the longer you wait, the more expensive it will get. Now that you're all prepared, it's time for step 5. Now, this is basically just packing your bags, getting on that plane, and enjoying the ride. Now, these are just the basic 5 steps that I took to do my study here in Japan. There are other ways to go about it. You can also, of course, do the exchange programs, which are also really great. But for me, I didn't use any program. I was an independent student, basically. I just applied on my own, not through my university in my home country. I just looked up universities, applied to the ones that I liked, and then got in. There's a lot of administration. There is a lot of administrative hassle that you have to go through. So please be prepared, and whatever you do, do not lose hope. Don't lose your patience. So that was it. I hope that was informative. I will also put a link to the full blog post so you can just read it on your own. I will also include maybe a little checklist for you, which is very general. So if you apply to certain other universities, I'm not sure that all of the documents will be included in my checklist, but it will give you a very rough idea, and it will enable you to start planning now. If you have any questions, you can always ask me in the comments down below. I also have a link to my Twitter, so feel free to ask me anything. I wish you all of the best, and if you do end up here in Japan at the university of your choice, please do give me a shout, and hopefully we can meet up one day. Best of luck, guys.